Good evening. My name's Caroline. This is the Midcoast Listening Town Hall for Senator Susan Collins. It's sponsored by Midcoast Indivisible and Lincoln County Indivisible and Suit Up Maine and the Women's Collective, Midcoast. We have the Midcoast Indivisible meets right here every other Wednesday, with our next meeting being a week from yesterday. We'd love to have you join us. We have been asking Senator Susan Collins for a long time to please have a town hall with us here on the Midcoast. We've asked her in person, we've called, we've sent letters, we've sent emails. We've gotten no response. We'll do it anytime, morning, noon, or night. Nothing. She just keeps refusing. So, this is her listening town hall. And we are going to be asking her questions. We're going to send it to her on tape so that she can thoughtfully answer our questions and respond to them publicly, each and every one of our questions. So if you have a question, come up to the microphone and address them to Senator Collins. This is the chair where she should be sitting. And we hope that she responds to all of our questions. Catherine is our moderator.
Hello, everyone. We have such a great crowd here. This is awesome. We are so excited to see you. Again, my name is Catherine. I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. And probably most importantly, we want this to be a civil public forum. We want to give people the opportunity to come up and speak, regardless of your opinion or where you stand with things. We want you to feel comfortable. So, as an audience, you're probably going to hear some people say things that you like and agree with, and that's great. So you can clap and cheer and hoot and holler, whatever you want to do. But if you hear something that you don't like or that you don't agree with, please don't boo or don't say anything mean. That's not a mature way to communicate in this situation. So if you don't like it, just use your silence, please. Likewise, we expect the same level of respect from our speakers. So when you come up, please be respectful of our audience. Please be respectful of our senator and her staff. So let's keep our language clean. Under no circumstances will we tolerate any kind of hateful or derogatory language. So if you start doing that, we'll have to take your mic away. And I really don't want to have to do that. So please keep it good. And I think that is about all I have to say. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Senator Susan Collins. Unfortunately, she doesn't happen to be here tonight. But just in case she changes her mind, we're going to leave a seat open for her. We've got some water for her. And we'll just see how it goes. All right. Okay.
Good afternoon, good evening, Susan Collins and your team. My name is Vicki Sheehan. I live in Thomaston, Maine. This past Saturday, I went to the march for Tax Day, and I work at the prison here in Warren, and I was looking at my federal taxes and state taxes. Federal taxes, it's withheld 14.94%, and state taxes 5.08%. And my question is, what percent does President Trump pay? That's my question. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins and your staff. My name is Jocelyn Paquette. I live in St. George, and I run a wildlife sanctuary. My question to you is about the environment, which is very special to me, very special to everybody. If we don't have it, we don't get to eat or drink. What role do you see for the development of offshore wind energy, solar energy, fisheries, forestry, tourism, etc., as it relates to Maine's economic future 20 years from now? Thank you very much.
Hi, Senator Collins. My name is Denise Beiser, and I live in South Thomaston, Maine. My question for you tonight is, in 1980, at the age of 12, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a pre-existing condition I've carried with me ever since. For myself and the thousands of other childhood cancer survivors, how are you able to promise that the new Trump Health Care Act will cover us into our future? Will you pass a clean budget with no riders? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. We appreciate you coming. My name is Susan Connery, and I live in Walpole, South Bristol. And I've written you several times and phoned you a few times. You may be familiar with some of the issues I've brought up. I'm asking tonight about two specific bills that you have supported. The first one is Resolution 18, and the second, passed by the House, its counterpart bill, Resolution 69. Both of these bills allow the killing of denning wolves and pups, hibernating bears, and other predators on national refuges in Alaska. And the second bill allows for the killing of iconic animals, including grizzlies and wolves, as well as their young, on federal refuge lands across Alaska. My question to you is, how on earth did you see this as a positive thing, and what will you do to reverse it? Thank you.
Hi, Senator Collins. I have questions from a group of us, so there are 4 questions, and I will get them all in within the 2 minutes. The first question is, Jeff Sessions has removed the Justice Department as a protector of voter registration in current court cases. Please respond to this danger to voter registration. Second question, how will you protect the legality of green card immigrants? There have been several incidents now of people who are legal, non-criminals, and who have been deported. Third question, I'm concerned about the law-abiding immigrants who are being singled out for deportation, but I'm more concerned with what Jeff Sessions' policies are going to do to all Americans. He is asking for tens of thousands of new immigration agents, border control agents, judges all controlled by Sessions, new search and arrest powers, and expedited hearings. This is an unprecedented increase in federal power, a step towards a national police force. What are you going to do to stop this national police force that will illegally threaten all of our civil liberties and our civil rights? And the last question, Senator Collins, it's quite understandable that you would try to support your party's president with respect to cabinet appointments, and indeed stood up against one of them. In the light of recent EPA and justice policies by these appointees, are you feeling any remorse? And if so, what do you propose to do to restore basic protections and civil rights that are being stripped by these policies? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. I'm Jim Chalfant. I live in Rockport. Ed Muskie is a hero to many Mainers, indeed to people all across America that consider clean air, clean water critical to good health, both physical and mental. Leon Billings has referred to Ed Muskie as America's most important environmental leader. Richard Lazarus has called him environmental law's champion. Senator Muskie's 2 most monumental environmental accomplishments were the Clean Air Act of 1970 and the Clean Water Act of 1972. After nearly 5 decades of progress, often in incremental steps and always based on scientific information and hard data, this administration has launched an all-out assault on the EPA and many of the hard-won measures that provide Mainers with the clean air and water we value, and which is critical to our economy and overall prosperity. What are you going to do to ensure that Ed Muskie's tireless efforts, indeed his legacy, will not be unraveled to the detriment of all Mainers?
Senator Collins, I'm Dr. Leonard Greenhalgh of Spruce Head, Maine. We've corresponded a lot. You've given me thoughtful responses to the questions I've asked. You've behaved most of the time in a deeply bipartisan fashion, and I hope you'll continue this. But I'm deeply concerned with what's happening with environmental protections. Will you support protecting our public lands from proposed loosening of environmental standards, especially allowing the extractive industries like mining and drilling for oil and natural gas? Will you do that? This is our heritage. Thank you, Senator Collins.
Good evening, Senator Collins. I'm Lynn Donovan from Camden, Maine. I run an art workshop business in the area. It appears to me, when I look back over your voting record during this administration, that many times it looks like you're voting just along party lines or following old process rather than responding to feedback from constituents or with consideration for long-term consequences. I have a three-part question regarding this. How is the input from people in Maine logged in at your various offices? How do you utilize that input in making your voting decisions? And what weight do you give to any monies received from lobbyist groups? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Leslie Spear from South Thomaston. My question to you is, given the threat of ocean warming and acidification on Maine's fisheries, please make a statement that reflects how you will approach policies and regulations to protect Maine's resources and economy. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Leslie Hyde. I live in the town of St. George. And I, this past fall, joined many of my fellow citizens here of Maine in celebrating the creation of Maine's newest national monument, the Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. I've heard rumors that there is an effort to take this away from us. And I want to know, will you, Susan Collins, stand with me and my fellow Mainers to protect Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument for today and forever? Thank you.
Hello, Senator Collins. I'm Jane Babbitt from Camden. You're on my speed dial. You might recognize my name. And I'm becoming more and more upset by the amount of time Mr. Trump and his extended family are spending traveling around this country and around the world on Trump business and some government business. And the amount of money they're spending is just incredible. And yet he proposes cutting the funding for the humanities, the arts, Meals on Wheels, all sorts of things that help real people. And I'd like to know how much he's spending. I'd like to know what sort of benefit he is getting with all of the stays at his Trump properties. And I think one way we can see some of his benefit from all of this is by seeing his tax returns. I think it's time.
Hello, Senator Collins. My name is Amy Incorvaya. I'm from St. George. My question is about the Trump administration undertaking rapid, massive dismantling and gutting of federal agencies, departments, federal programs since taking office in January. Not limited to, but some of the agencies are the State Department, Environmental Protection Agency, the Labor Department, Consumer Protections, the National Parks, National Endowment of the Arts, National Endowment of the Humanities, Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce, TSA, Housing and Human Development, DOT, Department of Health and Human Services, and Department of Education. Many of these agencies are being used for the opposite of the mission for which they were actually created, such as the EPA, which is supposed to be protecting the environment. The ramifications of these changes are already resulting in negative outcomes around the world and across the United States. Thus far, Congress has shown little interest in oversight or challenging this president. Senator Collins, since the Republicans have all the control at this time, what do you intend to do about the dismantling of the structure of the United States government? Thank you.
Senator Collins, my name is Mary Gaudette. I'm a science teacher in Rockland, and I live in St. George. The Trump administration has proposed defunding and eliminating the Sea Grant program, which has sponsored a lot of useful work throughout the country, and especially for Maine. Locally, the money has been used to sponsor the Fishermen's Forum for over 30 years. Defunding or eliminating the Sea Grant program would hurt our local aquaculture and fisheries. Where Maine has a significant amount of its economy and local heritage in fishing, how will you protect the state of Maine?
Hello, Senator Collins. My name is Rhonda Lee, and I'm from St. George. I have a short question, but it's important. What is your stand on the Trump administration's push for increasing offshore oil and gas exploitation on the Atlantic coast? Thank you.
Hello, Senator Collins. My name is Elaine Tucker. I'm from Belfast, and my questions are all around women's issues. In one of your many emails that you sent to me in response to my many emails, you have said, and I quote, that you are a strong proponent of family planning programs and measures to promote and protect women's health, and that you, quote, believe that the best way to reduce the number of abortions in the U.S. is to ensure that women have access to family planning services. Your votes have all been in favor of family planning in the Senate. However, my question is, how could you support the three men that you have voted for? And the first one, of course, is your very enthusiastic support of Jeff Sessions. He has voted consistently to restrict legal abortion care and other reproductive health services. He's voted to defund Planned Parenthood, which, as you know, is the only source of health care for many, many American women. His dismissal of health has gone into also dismissals of women's ability to earn a living. He voted against equal pay bills and against the Paycheck Fairness Act 4 times. He has been consistently against raising minimum wage, which disproportionately benefits women. I'll leave out that next part. The other one you've supported is Tom Price. You sounded a little skeptical about him in your email to me. You nevertheless did vote for him. He has been in favor of allowing insurers to opt out of covering preventive services for women, including birth control. You did vote for him. Judge Gorsuch presents a new set of problems. He seems to prefer the rights of well-paid corporations over the rights of their workers, especially their women workers. So my question to you is, how can I trust you? You say one thing, and then you vote in a way that is completely the opposite of what you have promised. I really would like to know. I would like you to tell the truth and then stand behind what you say.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Tony Kulik, and I'm from Belfast, Maine. This is a process question rather than a policy question. I'm curious to know that if you've ever in your long career voted against a Republican-supported bill or nomination that in fact lost. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. I'm very happy to be here to ask this question to you. My name is Bonnie Percival, and I am from St. George, Maine. And I want to say that a healthy, vibrant, productive society functions best when all its citizens have equal access to quality education, nutrition, and to quality, affordable health care. Quality, consistent health care is now basically reserved for the wealthy or for those lucky enough to be covered by an employer as long as that worker remains with that employer. This is wrong. Please explain healthcare should not be a privilege. Healthcare should be a right. Please explain your commitment to making health care available and affordable to all. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Philip Godet. I'm from Rockport. The NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has stated that the Gulf of Maine has in the last 10 years warmed up more than 99% of the oceans. That's having dire effects on Maine's fisheries and coastline. What will you do to protect continued funding for the NOAA? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Susan Girton from Bristol, and I want to thank you for responding to my concerns and questions about the Affordable Care Act. Although I continue to disagree, one of my concerns is that it has never been fully funded in the first place, and that particularly in Maine, it has not been able to see the full scope of what it can offer to people. And what will you continue to do with that, with the bill that you are working on? I have two other questions. One is regarding Bills 1430 and HR 1431 that will essentially dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency and limit credible evidence-based science that is current, and allow this administration to pick and choose what it believes in terms of its evidence. I want to know how you will go with that. That has apparently passed the House. And the third one is you voted against Elizabeth DeVos as Education Secretary. However, that did not appear to be effective. She is still there. As a long-time public school employee, I was alarmed to see a House bill that is emerging on 610 on a school voucher system that is going to eliminate nutrition programs, and I'm wondering what that will do for Maine, in addition to undermine our public schools, which need funding, like the Affordable Care Act, just as much as it needs anything else from the government. Thank you very much.
I've never done this before.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Penelope Ray. I live in Rockport, and I have been a Mainer for 40 years. I voted for you. I am your constituent. I am not a paid activist. I am a concerned Maine citizen. For the record, I am deeply offended when your office tells me that my calls are problematic for you. because my call prevents important constituents who truly need your assistance to get through to your office. That has happened 3 times to me. You should welcome feedback from anyone here in Maine, and especially from someone who voted for you. I am deeply saddened that you refused to join us tonight. Many people are making an effort to communicate with you. In addition to phoning you, I wrote you a 2-page letter about my concerns regarding the connections between Russia and the Trump campaign and administration. You responded by letter to me on March 22nd. My question is about your response. You wrote you support investigation by the Senate Investigation Committee rather than appointing an independent special prosecutor. Your rationale against a special prosecutor is that, and I quote your letter, the Senate would have to pass authorizing legislation, get a budget, appoint chairs and members, hire staff, review and issue security clearances, find secure workspace, and deal with many other logistical issues. Our nation has just spent about $50 billion bombing other countries. I ask you, is investing in a special prosecutor not too much to ask for the future of our great nation? How can you not support open investigation of such a serious matter? Getting to the bottom of Russia's successful interference in our election should be the #1 concern and priority of all Americans. This is about patriotism, not party lines. If there is nothing to hide, then you should want to reassure all of us, and that cannot be done behind closed doors. You end your letter to me with this, and I have to say I was a little shocked. You wrote about wanting Jeff Sessions to recuse himself. And then you end your letter saying, I quote you, I applaud the Attorney General's decision to do so. You are referring to his decision to recuse himself from the investigation into how he lied and withheld information about his own connections to the Russians. He lied to you, Senator. How can you applaud anything he does related to the malicious Russian scandal and treasonous behavior by our government officials?
Good evening, Senator Collins. I'm here to speak about the Medicaid program. As you know, nursing home care is covered by Medicaid. Many residents in nursing home couldn't be there without it, and yet the plan is to cut Medicaid significantly. What do you plan to tell people who are immobile, who have lost bodily functions, who need nursing home care? What do you plan to tell them now that there will be no care for them? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Amy Fisher. I live in Camden. Thank you for responding to all my letters of inquiry. I have 2 questions for you this evening. In his weekly newsletter, Angus King has indicated that an important focus of the Senate Intelligence Committee is to determine the degree to which Russia has interfered in our local and state voting systems. Are you concerned about this? And what can you share from the committee that you have learned so far? My second question is, will you commit to making the Intelligence Committee's investigation as transparent as possible? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. I'm Claire Reiser from Waldoboro, Maine. I am a registered voter, and I am not being paid by anyone to be here. I have many, many matters that I would like to bring to you, but that is not possible in this short amount of time. So 2 items. One is how are you going to approach our president, DT, I can't say his name, sorry, how are you going to approach the fact that he called to congratulate Erdogan of Turkey on the victory of his plan to become an absolute dictator in that country? This is the United States of America, which in theory stands for freedom, liberty, justice under the law. How can you congratulate someone who has plans to do to his people what we would never tolerate or accept in our country? Now, related to that, I come from, perhaps not obviously related, but I come from Lincoln County. Waldoboro is in Lincoln County, the oldest county in the oldest state in the United States. This state is losing population. We are losing young people. My 2 children are on the other side of the country. My grandchildren are on the other side of the country. The only areas in Maine that seem to be growing at this particular time are areas where recent immigrants have come from other parts of the world. Portland, Lewiston, even Millburn in Washington County. And in Millburn, there are 3 generations of the same families that have decided to stay in that part of Maine that very few people are moving to. So I want to know what you are planning to do to approach our president on the matter of his plan to deport as many people as possible, including those with green cards and DACA status, to deport with no sensitivity, no care, unlike the situation with the dead babies in Syria that he seemed to care about momentarily. There seems to be no understanding of what the refugees from Central America in particular have to go through to get to this country, and that mothers and fathers in Central America would let their children leave their homes to travel an incredibly dangerous journey to get here, says more about what terrible things are going on in their countries than about anything else. And having worked in sanctuary in Texas in the 1980s, I know that what those children are fleeing are situations that were inflicted upon them by the Reagan administration of this nation.
Hello, Senator Collins. My name is James Cook, and I'm a resident of Rockport, Maine. And like everyone else here tonight, I was not paid to come here tonight. I'm a citizen and a concerned constituent. I am here to document the pattern that led to this town hall tonight, and then to ask some questions about that. This began not just a few weeks ago casually, but 92 days ago, on January 19th, when we sent our first very civil request for a listening town hall with you. Over that period, we received 3 kinds of response. The first period was one of simply not receiving any response. The second was a period in which we received a message that said, Senator Collins, that you had no scheduling availability. And the third response we received, only after we indicated that we would be holding this town hall, was that you would be willing to meet with us, but that us could only be 8 individuals who submitted written questions in advance. And turning around and looking at the crowd, I don't think that this crowd of concerned Mainers could fit in a space for 8 people. So I also want to note that 78 days ago, after we had not heard from you for some time, we asked 2 questions. First, we asked, is there any date in the next 6 months in which, not just now, but at any time in the next 6 months in which you would be available? Surely there must be one day, a period of a few hours in which you would have availability. And second, if your schedule is that booked for the next 6 months, please indicate to us your next date of availability before 2020. Unfortunately, we haven't heard back, and it has been 78 days in which we have not received a response to those questions. What we have heard about you not wanting to participate in a town hall has come in 3 strains from you and your staff. The first is that the people who will be at a town hall will be uncivil. And what I've heard tonight is the highlight and hallmark of civility. I have heard people who have indignation in their heart. I have heard people who have concern in their heart, who have regret in their heart, a few who have had desperation in their heart. But that is not uncivility. That is an indication of a problem that a representative needs to fix. The second issue that you've raised is the idea that perhaps only some voices will be heard. But I think all voices who want to be heard tonight are being heard. And the third, and this is really what I want to understand, this is my question. The third objection is, if we give a town hall to the people of Midcoast, Maine, everyone in Maine will want one. And I guess my question is this: isn't that what democracy looks like?
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Tom Babbitt. I live in Camden, Maine. I have voted for you on occasion. How about that? It's a lovely night in Thomaston. It's foggy, it's 40 degrees. It's just perfect, and we're sorry you're not here to listen to your constituents. I come from a different perspective and a different set of fearful indications. I did 3 tours in Vietnam, and we all know that conflict was started under false pretenses of the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. We also know that the Iraq War, which was also vastly expensive, was started under a false pretense of weapons of mass destruction. We have, as president, a provocateur who provokes not only our enemies and dangerous parties, but also our allies. And I am not a fearful person naturally. I sail thousands of miles offshore. I do lots of crazy, bold things. I lose sleep with Donald Trump as president because I am convinced that all he wants to do is to start a war and try to be a hero. Will you stop him?
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Chris Hirsch. I'm from Thomaston, Maine. And I wanted to point out the introduction you made for Senator Jeff Sessions back at in January to the Senate Judiciary Committee, where you stated, "I can vouch confidently for the fact that Jeff Sessions is a person of integrity, a principled leader, and a dedicated public servant." Since in short order, that was turned out to be an absolute lie, as he lied to the Confirmation Committee where he indicated, am not aware of these activities, meaning any sort of contact with the Russians, and I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in the campaign. I did not have communication with the Russians. Clearly, that turned out to be a bald-faced lie. Given that, the fact that he has been allowed to recuse himself from the investigation of any possible collusion with the Russians, I think that's totally inadequate. And you, as a member of the Intelligence Committee, must understand the fear that we all hold of that collaboration that happened with the Trump campaign during the election period. I would ask you, and I think this would really go a long way to build trust back in our representatives, if you, as the original champion of Jeff Sessions, asked and led a campaign to remove him from the position of Attorney General, and then further, that you go for a totally independent investigative procedure. We can't have Jeff Sessions' judicial system overseeing the investigation. Thank you.
Good evening, Susan. It's nice to not have you here tonight. As James said earlier, the schedule of how many times we've requested speaks for itself. My name is Shirley Barlow. I was born in Portland, Maine. I grew up in East Boothbay, Maine, and I've immigrated to Thomaston, Maine. And I too am very concerned about the lack of interest in the connections between Trump and the Russians. And in my wakefulness last night, I came up with a wonderful suggestion of how to save lots of money, and that would be to go ahead and get an independent prosecutor appointed as soon as possible, and then he just simply needs to contact the nearest federal court to subpoena the president's taxes, and for however long it takes the president to get his taxes to that committee, we should just simply freeze his assets while we're waiting.
Good evening, Senator. My name is Joe Patton, and for the last 20 years, my wife, Mary, and I have lived in Rockland. Prior to that, we lived in Vermont, where I was bred and buttered, and I was really pleased and had the opportunity to vote for a Republican, Jim Jeffords, for senator in the United States. At some point in his career, I think it was in the early 80s, Senator Jeffords became an independent overnight. And when people asked him why he did that, he said, when people asked him why he left the Republican Party, he replied, "I didn't leave the Republican Party left me." Now I think it's time, maybe past time, that you should consider that, because the Republican Party of today, of which you are a part, is not the party that you grew up with. It's not the party that you entered the Senate with. And you have been seemingly lockstep with this incredible party of obstruction and done whatever Majority Leader McConnell asks. He says, jump, and you say, how high? It's time, Senator, to reconsider and think about either changing, becoming an independent, or maybe just getting out of politics. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Chris O'Rowe. I live in Cushing, Maine. First, I would like to thank you for participating in at least this coming together this evening. Even though if you couldn't be here in person, you brought over 100 people together. You have recently fueled speculation about your future plans by repeatedly not directly answering the question about whether you are going to run for governor. This turned into a national conversation because of your position in the Senate, but it also begs the question, if you're going to run for governor, if, as you say, you're considering where you can do the most good for the people of Maine, wouldn't it be therefore a good idea to start having conversations with the people of Maine? You could in fact ask them directly whether we would rather have you in office in Augusta, in office in Washington, or in office at all for some of us. We know that you are very proud of your flawless voting record in the Senate, and that is an impressive achievement. I don't disagree with that at all. But it would be nice if you would take that approach to spending some time when the Senate is not in session, when you're in summer. It's a lovely state in summer. Come and meet some of us. Talk to us. We're very nice people, as you have seen this evening. So we'd love to see you. So my simple question is, when will you have meetings with the people of the state of Maine?
Well, greetings, absent Senator Collins. I think this is a little bit unfair, so I'm going to break your perfect record. I'm going to give you the answer to my question for us and for you. The answer is 0, 0. I'd like you to pass it on to Trump when he criticizes the demonstrators in his traditional fashion. How many unpaid political activists are here tonight?
Good evening, Senator Collins. Many people in this room came down to Portland for Senator King's listening session, and I felt like since this is the only listening session I'm going to get to participate in, that I would come north and spend time with you all. My name is Diane Russell. I was born and raised in this state, and the great thing about being raised in Maine is that as a young girl is just how strong women leaders have always been in this state. It's why I think Senator Collins has consistently talked about her record on women. So I just would like to set the stage here a little bit. One, she introduced Jeff Sessions, which is very similar to Joe McCarthy. Only Margaret Chase Smith stood up to Joe McCarthy. Senator Collins voted for Neil Gorsuch for the U.S. Supreme Court, who has a very strong record against women, people of color, our gay and lesbian and transgender friends. And that, to me, speaks wildly, again, of Margaret Chase Smith, who many of you may not know, undermined the Supreme Court nomination of a gentleman who later was determined to be not a good person. She held up a very bad Supreme Court nomination. Unfortunately, Senator Collins not only voted to put that man on the Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch, who really does not like workers or women, she also, after spending weeks and days talking to the national media about how she was opposed to the nuclear option, lined up and voted to undermine the U.S. Senate. That is not leadership. On top of that, as a formerly elected official, I understand how hard it is to be a woman in elected office, which is why it was astonishing to me that Senator Collins would vote to silence not just Elizabeth Warren, but Coretta Scott King. When I was a little girl, there was a little girl from Maine, and I grew up in the Cold War. And it was a little girl from Maine named Samantha Smith who had the audacity to send a letter to the USSR asking, "Why do you want to be at war with us?" A little girl from Maine brought down the Cold War, and I've spent the rest of my life not living in fear of nuclear weapons. And yet today, because of the advanced rhetoric and the accelerated rhetoric of many of the men who are in leadership positions right now, including at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, I, for the first time, fear a new Cold War and genuinely fear nuclear threat. We saw that this weekend. I would like to know what Senator Collins is going to do, considering the work that Samantha Smith did at 10 years old to solve the greatest crisis in human history. I would like to know what Senator Collins is going to do to de-escalate the conversation and to move us back to a space of diplomatic conversations and away from this nuclear proliferation and this constant need to go to war to profit the very corporations who are consistently undermining us across the board. That's what I'd like to know.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Crystal Gonzalez, and I currently reside in Waldoboro. I was born here in the Midcoast. My mother is from a family of 7, my father a family of 15. It has been said that my great-grandmother is a Native American, which I'm in the process of researching. Because of my family, I believe in love and family. I am not a member of the ACLU, nor am I a member of the ACLJ. I am, however, a domestic abuse survivor and a rape survivor, both by the hands of white American men. As a new member of the AFU, America's Family United, and a true Mainer, I stand before you because I believe in fairness, respect, and dignity for all humanity. This, of course, includes immigrants, whether documented or not, whether dreamers, documented or not, or asylum seekers, documented or not. Might I remind everyone here tonight, this is 2017, and we as a country are still talking about racism. This is unacceptable. Because this is my land and this is your land, I cannot stay quiet while my local police, my county, my state, and my country are on the verge of racial profiling. I ask you, Senator Collins, what are your plans to protect my migrated husband, my children, my family, my fellow Mainers, as well as myself from the very obvious racial changes taking place by our presidential administration? And because I would like to prepare my children, in what year will we stop looking at color, at disabilities, or at race, and start seeing humans as people? Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Tracy Helbuena. I'm from Rockport, Maine, and I am not a paid protester. I am a concerned citizen. My question is the following. Given President Trump's very well-documented and well-established record of denigrating, mocking, and stepping on the most vulnerable among us, what will you do to protect our state's gay, lesbian, transgender, transsexual, bisexual, and queer citizens?
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Susan Petersmeyer. I'm a resident of Camden, Maine. And my question is on health care. I understand that you are supporting a health care plan that would give power and authority to the states rather than the federal government. I would like to know how in the world you think this would benefit citizens, since in your own state, a governor in your own party has not allowed many of the federal dollars sent to the state to be dispersed to the citizens that they were intended to support.
Good evening, Senator Collins. My name is Annette Nagel, and I live in Rockland, Maine. With the increasing evidence that shows that there may be have been Russian collusion involved in our election, which by its very nature should be shocking to all of us, that any nation outside of our own could have an impact on our elections. Why do you think an independent investigation is not needed, given the compromising actions of the House Intelligence Committee Chair, Devin Nunes, which has led to his recusal and an investigation by the FBI of Nunes himself? And related to that, if proceeding an independent investigation, there is indeed substantial evidence that Russia has been involved in our elections, would you vote to not only remove the president, the vice president, but his entire cabinet from office?
Good evening, Senator. My name is Jeremy Chapman. I live in Rockland. I've been increasingly dismayed and frightened by the belligerence of this government. After 16 years of war, it seems we're headed for more and more. You in the past have always supported warlike measures. My question to you is, does anybody really know where the aircraft carriers are? Who controls them? And is there a constitutional basis for their use? Thank you.
So, good evening, Senator. It's nice to see you. My name is Jeff Parker. I live in Rockport. I have a pretty good feel for, because the subject I want to get onto is very near and dear to me, but I get it. Big crowds, messy. I've been a member of the Rockport Select Board for 4 terms. It can get out of hand. I think that this group has proven that what they want to do is share. They want to share their passion, their insight, their point of view. And what I would like to share with you, because I know that you prefer to talk one-on-one, so I would, if anybody in your office gets to the end of this tape, I would like to offer my time to you to share my perspective as the father of a transgender child. And it saddens me, it angers me to see what your party is doing, the direction they're going. They're undoing years and years of progress and rights for transgenders, rights for all LGBT, everybody. That is no less than the same importance of the civil rights movement or any other movement, to have human beings considered to be human beings. And I will make it easy for you to get a hold of me or my son or anybody else in this room who would be happy to talk with you one-on-one as it appears it's more comfortable for you. If the true reason to do that is to dig deeper and to have an extended one-on-one conversation, I think anybody in this room is worthy of your time. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. Sorry you couldn't make it. I've struggled with how to address you. There are so many things, so many issues that desperately need addressing. And it occurs to me that almost all of them come back to our president. Mr. Trump, President Trump, is clearly unfit for office. That's not hard for anybody to see. I would remind you that every newspaper in the United States, save 2, said words pretty much to that effect. Dallas Morning News, Manchester Union Leader, across the United States, they saw this as a very poor move. And one of the papers that supported him is owned by Jared Kushner, so we discount that. Many of them are still saying that. And it's clear from the man's actions that we're all in sort of a daze trying to figure out what is going on and how that guy got there and what we're going to do about it. There's a long list of grievances, very long list, and he's adding to them multiple times per day. And it's getting worse and worse. And I don't see the Congress as recognizing that this is going on. The emperor has no clothes. We're becoming an embarrassment, have become an embarrassment internationally. There needs to be a stop put to this, and some people have already spoken to this, and it seems to me there's an obvious solution. President Trump is clearly hiding his taxes. He doesn't want to show them. We all know that. I would question whether there ever was an audit. We don't have any way of knowing. But he can show this year's taxes. They're not in audit yet, just turned in or will be shortly. At any rate, the Congress has the authority to expose his taxes. And I suspect that if that faces him and he has to do it, that he'll resign from office before he'll show them. It seems to me pretty likely that they are a damning document for him. And we could move on and get on to running this country the way it needs to be run and to represent the American people as it was initially planned for and it has for a couple of hundred years. We'd like you to take a leadership role in that. It's an obvious need, and you could help fill it and make Maine proud again from all the great leaders we've had, George Mitchell and Muskie and a whole slew of them. So please, do what you can to see about getting this man out of office and getting us our country back. Thank you.
Good evening, Senator Collins. Even though you're not here, I'm going to address the absent chair. My question is simple. Do you support a free press in this country when your party and the president calls the press the enemy of the people?
All right, thank you everybody that has come up, but I want to give a few more minutes to see if there's anybody else in there that's going to muster up some courage to come up and speak. So I'm going to ask Tracy to come up. Tracy is one of our leaders of the Midcoast Maine Indivisible. She's helped put this group together, put this event together. We love her. She's just going to give a little snippet of what we do.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tracy Helbuena. Midcoast Maine Indivisible was my brainchild one day in the post-election depression. I looked online to see whether or not there was already an Indivisible group in the Midcoast, and there was not, and so right then and there, I started one. And here we are. When I started this group, I had no idea if it would be successful. I really had no idea how it would turn out. But look at us now. It's been amazing. We have about 850 people on our Facebook site. We have about 250 people on our email list. And we've consistently had 90 to 100 people showing up at meetings. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I also have another big thank you to go out to Deb. And she's back there. She was our lead organizer for this event. All right, and we have a fun activity. before you go. Oh, also, before you go, please know there's some postcards back, some wish you were here postcards that we can send to Susan Collins, okay? And now if you could just hold on for 1 second, we want to do a little closing fun activity to kind of show. Yep. Sit down. Just have a couple questions that we want to summarize before we turn the video camera off. So I would ask you to raise your hands if you were paid to be here tonight. All right. We wish we were, right? I would like people to raise their hands if they are a concerned constituent. Excellent. Raise both your hands if you believe in democracy. Woo! All right. I want you to stand up if you feel that the proceedings tonight have been rude or mean-spirited. Yeah, you don't have to sit on the floor. Stand up, though, if you feel that this has been a civil public forum. All right. Remain standing if you feel that Senator Susan Collins has heard you tonight. We'll find out, right? Stand up again if you would like Senator Collins to answer these questions publicly when she receives them. All right. And let's keep clapping. Keep clapping if you feel like this is what democracy looks like. Woo! Excellent. Just so you know, we will be submitting, we will update people if we get responses from Senator Collins. Our main ways of communication are via social media, Facebook, emails. So if you're not involved in any of that, make sure that we have your contact information in the back so that as soon as we do get a response, if we get a response to these questions, we will let you know. Okay? Thank you again for coming out.